Today we're going to be looking at zone 3, which is where we now need to cover the entire width of the baseline, and we need to also cover the front of the court. We're going to be focusing on using a combination of crossovers and running steps, and using the staggered split step. Remember, the split step or the staggered split step is used when you are in motion and you're anticipating or you're reading the game and you are making a decision where you're going to move next before your opponent has hit the ball. So I've just showed you the footwork that we would use in zone 3 when we can kind of anticipate where the ball's going, and we were using a combination of crossovers and running steps. And obviously each direction I started the movement with a staggered split step and pushing off the foot furthest away from where I want to go. Now obviously there's going to be situations where you don't have time to do a split step, or situations where you haven't been able to anticipate the direction of where the next ball is going, and so you do jump, but you land in a more neutral position. When you find you get into those situations, you're going to have to move more quickly, and rather than using a staggered split step, you're going to use the first step quickness drills that I was explaining in the first video that we did right back at the beginning, where you can use either a combination of open step towards the ball, close step towards the ball, drop step or gravity step where you pull the foot furthest away and then move, or a variation of the split step, which rather than it being more jumpy, is more closer to the ground, and some people will refer to that as a dig step. Okay, so the last thing that I'm going to say on this zone 3 footwork, and specifically I'm going to talk about the first step quickness drills, is which one most often, because a number of coaches will be very strongly in favour of using one. You know, if you want to go in that direction, there is only one way to go. I'm presenting you with 4 options, and I believe that all of those footwork combinations could be used in different situations depending on how much time you have, how far you have to go, and most importantly, the width of your base. I think above all, the width of your base will determine what you're likely to do next. If you start quite narrow and quite upright, in order to go forwards or backwards, it's very common to use the staggered split step. Okay? If you're a little bit wider, particularly when you're going to go laterally, it's more common from this position that in order to move somewhere quickly, you're going to pivot across your body. And if you're particularly wide, and again, when we're talking about a lateral ball, if you're in a defensive situation like this, the quickest way to move laterally is to use that gravity step that I talked about, where you drop under and go. So, I hope that's kind of clarified a couple of scenarios where you might use all of them. Probably the only one that I would say I don't really see happening very often, at least as far as moving quickly over a greater distance, is the open step. I see that used more for a quick movement, like a blocking shot, just like in contact sports like rugby, where you would maybe move to tackle someone, or in football, you would move to tackle them with your foot. I don't really see it as a movement that you would use necessarily to get somewhere quick. I think generally speaking, this opposite hip is used a lot more commonly when you're trying to get somewhere quickly and you haven't had time to use a staggered split step. So I hope that kind of gives you some examples of maybe when you might use it. And certainly if you do want to encourage your athletes to use some of the footwork, like the drop step, the gravity step, sorry, or this pivot step, then really just put them in the base that you want them to start in, and the footwork will happen naturally.